Thank you so much, leaders, for joining us on another episode of this podcast that we are doing it with senior leaders at DawdleLive. And we've got a very interesting guest today, very special one. And we are in touch for the last 1 month now. Even had a very, kind of one of the most favorite conversations I had in the last 2, 3 months, with Raja. And I was able to kind of convince him to bring him to the podcast to share his experiences, his insights with our global audience. So I've got Rajaganesan today. Joining us, sharing, gonna share his insights on various topics. But before we go there, would give a very quick introduction about Raja. He's a seasoned consulting and delivery leader with over 20 years of experience driving digital transformation and large scale solution delivery across BFSI domain. He's currently director consulting delivery at CGI, where he leads global client engagements, builds high performing agile teams, and delivers complex technology programs across regions. With deep expertise in guidewire implementations, GCC partnerships, and end to end project execution, he has successfully led cloud transformations and established centers of excellence across multiple technologies. He is known for his transformational leadership style, where he kind of combines stakeholder management with execution excellence to deliver a scalable business driven outcome. Thank you so much, Raja, for joining us on this show.
Thank you, Rishi. Thank you for the opportunity and time you have taken to have this conversation today.
Thank you so much, Raja. Raja, you have grown right from a business analyst, which is kind of a fresher's role, to leading large consulting delivery programs for global BFSI clients. When you look back, what are those key experiences that have shaped your transition into a leadership role?
Honestly, the biggest shift wasn't a promotion. It was a mindset change. That's what I would say. Early in my career, I always focused on solving problems in front of me, right? Over time, I realized leadership is about owning outcomes, even when the parts that you don't directly control, right? So, few things really shaped me. One was like working closely with clients, seeing how the decision making impact the real business outcomes. The another was handling failures. Not everything go as planned, right? We all know that. So those moments really taught me more than the successful ones, right? So finally, learning to trust and empower teams, right? You can't scale as a leader if you try to do everything yourself, right? So those are the things that I would say that what I am today.
This is pretty insightful, and you explained it in a very succinct way, Raja. And you know, what we also see is that you have worked extensively in insurance and financial services, especially with large transformation programs. From your experience, what makes a digital transformation in BFSI significantly more complex than the other industries?
See, when you look at BFSI from the outside, right, it's just another domain, things like that. It looks like that, but it is layered with a lot of complexity, right? The first one we all know, right? It's regulation. You're not just building fast, you're building compliance systems that slows things down drastically, right? And it all adds a lot of checks. Second of all, you will see legacy systems, right? Many organizations run their systems decades old, right? Technologies are old, their systems are old, there is so much data, so they depend on the older systems. So transforming it, starting from fresh, it's like more like, you change the engine while the machine is still running, right? So and third of all, you will see risk sensitivity, right? Even a small mistake you bring in banking or insurance can have a huge consequences, right? So the decision making is naturally more cautious, slow, right? Which makes the transformation very, very harder.
Yes. So, kind of changing the engine when it's running will also require a secondary engine, where you can transition and then can come back to the.
Absolutely, but the cost impacts, right? They can't have a secondary engine, right? So they just want you to change the engine while it's running, right? You move certain parts, right?
Yeah.
That's how the cloud transformations come in. The microservices architecture came into picture, right? Where you can shut down a portion of it and then you can run all that. So I mean, a lot of things keep evolving, I would say, but predominantly these three make it very difficult in banking and insurance transformations, right? So these are very key elements.
And rather, you've got a very unique profile. The reason is that, you have kind of covered the entire life cycles, right? From responding to RFPs to delivering large scale programs. Where do you think most of the organization get it wrong in the journey?
Most organizations get it wrong at the transition point, right, between sales and delivery, right? What I mean by that is during the RFP stage or proposal stage, right? So the tendency is to overpromise, sometimes unintentionally, right? So people do it. And then it becomes very difficult during the execution stage. The reality kicks in. You have constraints, you have dependencies, you have plenty of unknowns. So the real success comes when the same people who shape the deal stay involved in delivery or at least ensure continuity. It brings in a lot of honesty early on, helps, right? And it better aligns expectations upfront than to fix a broken trust later. So we always need a person who did the solutioning of a deal
Yes.
stays during the implementation phase as well, right? So
Yes.
it creates a lot of advantage for the organizations, but most of all, that's not how most organizations operate, right? Sales delivery is like always a coffee toffee, right? So they have their own targets, these guys have their own
Yes.
problems, so it naturally tends to drift. But this is a very good model, if you ask me. I have
Mm.
seen that happening in organizations, but those organizations which are successful in large transformations,
Yes.
right? Especially projects which are programs which are seven
Mm.
plus years or 5 plus years. You need people who have been part of the solutioning at the beginning, stay till at least the fag end, so that they get to see that certain milestones are achieved and they are there in the journey.
And this is a very pertinent point because I remember, like, there was one startup with which I was working. My founder told me that the customer success person, we used to call him customer success, like, because it was a small startup, so has to remain with you while you go and meet the client for the second time. First time you go and meet, but from the second time he has to be there, so that when the transition happens from you, like closing the deal, to this person, the client already knows him and that trust remains.
Trust is the biggest factor today, right? Many businesses are relationship driven,
Yes.
right? So people have to believe in what the others are saying, right? So
Yes.
you can put everything in a PPT, you can have the best of sales presentation, but if they
Yes.
don't trust your real organization, you can have plenty of success stories to showcase,
Uh,
but today's business in the evolving landscape of plenty of technologies and whatnot, right? So trust is something that people have to really rely on.
yes. You have built and scaled teams across geographies, including, setting up centers of excellence. So, what are the biggest challenges while you are building a high performing global team? And how do you maintain consistency in delivery?
Very interesting question, right? So the biggest challenge I've always faced is the consistency. It is
Mm.
just not the output, but in the mindset, right? When you have teams across geographies, the biggest problem you face is difference in culture, the
Mm.
communication styles, and
Mm.
even definition of done can create friction, right? People come
Yes.
from various walk of life, they come from different understanding the local things, right? So it's very difficult. So
Mm.
what has really worked for me in
Mm.
creating such strong team is the common framework. What I mean by common frameworks is you set certain clear processes,
Mm.
you set shared goals, and you have regular communication rhythms. You set that, right? Then people will really fall into place. And beyond that, right, you also have to invest in people. That is the very, very key, right? For example, you have a big agenda, right? A global vision, right? A
Yes.
global vision of the company. It can only be adapted by every team in every geography only if they understand the context, right? So
Yes.
it is the very, very, it is the key person in the local geography who carries that vision and then sets it to the local context, right? That is what really makes a distributed model work, and it has always worked for me. So we have to invest in people, not only set processes or set your definitions of done, you
Yes.
also make them understand their cultural differences or how do you handshake among people, and then you set these catalysts or evangelists right
Yes.
in place, and then you empower them well,
Mm.
have a regular connect with them, understand what's happening within the respective teams, and you keep evolving these framework over a period of it is just not that you put in a process and then it works well first quarter, then you say okay, repeat it in the second quarter. May not happen. You have to
Mm.
keep making shifts, making improvements, right? You have
Mm.
to always listen to the team people. So that really actually makes the magic in making the distributed model work for me.
Right. And there's a lot of hue and cry around consulting where people say that there's a lot of gap between what is promised and what is delivered. And I've seen a lot of disgruntled clients as well. How do you manage client expectations while ensuring realistic and successful execution?
I'll give you an example, right? So there was a project, right, where everything was going very well at the initial stage. very good momentum, happy stakeholders, happy team.
Mm,
When the team hit a roadblock,
mm,
right? Something completely outside of team's control, right?
mm.
But it was going to impact the timelines. We all know that.
Mm.
The easy option is to delay the conversation,
Yes.
try to fix it quietly, right? Instead of making a big hue and cry about it, right? The best choice that I made at that point in time, over a period of time, I learned this. So I made a choice to bring it up early with the client.
Yes.
It wasn't a comfortable conversation, but to my surprise, the client really appreciated the transparency. Actually, client worked with us to find a solution. That experience actually reinforced trust, right? And it actually created a lot of value. Clients actually value honesty more than your perfection, right?
Yes.
So instead of avoiding the problem, right, it's about how you handle them. So
Yes.
being trustworthy at all times is the key, right? So there are gaps between what is promised and what's delivered. As I said, sales versus delivery.
Yes.
So delivery team has to be always honest. Every client has come through this life cycle. They know that there is a percentage of sale that has
Yes.
happened during the beginning, right? So
Yes.
you have to, what they look up to you as a
Yes.
delivery team is to be very transparent and honest. And of
Mm,
course, they will be little flexible with the timeline.
mm.
Maybe they will help you with resources, or they will help you come up with a co-created solution as to how to deal with the problem, right?
Yes.
Because nothing goes as planned, right? So we all
Yes.
know that in delivery. So transparency is the key.
That is so well said, actually. People kind of underestimate this power of being trustworthy.
Typically
I still remember,
fearful.
Raja, there was one. Yeah.
Typically people are fearful, right? Okay, I've not
Yeah.
envisaged this, what the client would say. We have to have that courage to go and talk to, have the
Yes.
tough conversation with the client. Yes, it's not going to be easy, but you will sail through, and you will see that client starts collaborating with you
Yeah.
much, much more closer than earlier, because there is a great amount of trust that is built.
And Raja, you kind of describe your leadership style as democratic and transformational. And in a high pressure consulting environment, what kind of leadership approach actually works to build this trust which you are talking about?
See, when consulting is always high pressure, right? So in high pressure environments, people don't respond well to a command and control leadership, right? What really works is a balance. You need to be decisive when required, but also create space for people to contribute.
Yes.
For me, leadership is about clarity and trust. Be clear about the goal, remove obstacles for your team, and back
Yes.
them when things get tough for them, right? You be there as a leader, right? And most importantly, you stay calm. Team generally
Yes.
takes cues from the leaders, right? If they stay grounded, it helps everyone else to stay focused, right? So it's a balanced approach that you should take. You should collaborate with people, because sometimes a big idea can come from the least
Mm.
expected team member.
Yes.
So you have to create that ecosystem where everybody is empowered. That's what agile framework is all about, right? Everyone is playing a role, equally empowered. So you
Yes.
do retrospectives, you do a lot of ceremonies where you have to be open to listen in, and it's just not a ceremony, right? You just don't run it for the sake of running it, but you go back and tell the team that where you picked the idea, how you evolved it, and how
Yes.
you implemented it. Give back the credit to the team, so people are open enough to come and tell you that even before you hit a problem. They will
Yes.
envisage the problem because they know better than the leads and others, right? Because they are on the ground, they are daily doing things. So they will come back upfront and tell you that you're going to hit a roadblock. So you will have enough time to, fail fast so that
Yes.
you can actually bounce back. So it's always key to empower people.
Yeah.
That actually keeps you in a way calm, because you know that people are going to approach you. You're approachable. Open door policies. We say it, but if you really put it in action, I think people are going to really keep it very simple, and then you can always bring that balance.
And Raja, do you remember a situation or, where you kind of walked into a program that was already off track? And what did you focus on first to bring it?
Okay. Yes, more than once, right? So I remember there was one program where timeline had slipped. The client had lost the confidence, and even the team was unsure where things stood, right? So the first thing is I didn't even want to fix everything, right? First, get
Mm.
clarity. So we sat down, we spent time in understanding what's actually broken versus what just looks broken, right? And then that simplified everything, right? And then you cut through the noise, you reset priorities, and you focus on few critical outcomes instead of trying to fix everything at once. Now,
Yeah.
all the more importantly, we had an honest conversation with the client that reset the trust. Once that happened, the
Mm.
rest became manageable, right? So, I mean, it's all about how you have the conversation from day one and on your
Yes.
regular meetings with the client, right? We have all the dailies, weeklies, and monthlies and quarterly reviews. So, what you present, how you present things, and how you tap into the risks well in advance, right? As I said, listening to the team deep dive, keep always a focus around it. I think
Yes.
that's going to really help bring in that. So it has happened in multiple projects. It's
Yes.
just, I mean, I would say it's a BAU most of the time when you are assigned a project, or there is a lot of parallel things happening,
Mm.
right? So you always get into something that's always ongoing when
Mm.
when there's a shifted moved. It's always that's what happens, right? So you are built for it, and you know where to pick it up, how to demystify things around it, and then there's going to be a lot of people telling you a lot of things. So you
Yes.
need to sometimes read between the lines and then talk to the right stakeholders. Sometimes the quiet person is the one who will give you the right problem statement, right? He says that's where. So you have to tap into a lot of things, and you have to do it quick.
Mm.
It's not that you take a long time to do it. So that's where the experience kicks in. So I would say this is a BAU for leaders who always do this.
And now, a little bit about, what happens behind the curtains. Like, consulting can be very intense. And, so how do you manage the team morale and prevent burnout?
That's, right. There was a phase in one program, right, where the team was working long hours, right, and you could see the
Mm.
energy dropping, right. So all
Yes.
we have to do is, make some small conversations, consistent ones, not checking with the people about their tasks and things, right. How are they doing? Right, what do they do, how are they doing, right, and being realistic during the planning phase. Sometimes burnout comes from committing to timelines that aren't sustainable, right, and as a leader you have to
Yeah.
set the tone. So basically you have to keep the team morale, teach them what is causing the burnout, and then you go have a very honest, transparent conversation with the client saying what's going to happen if they continue
Yes.
to push things onto the team with
Mm.
unrealistic deadlines and things like that. It's going to really hurt them, right? So if you have a honest conversation and touch base with the team that what is realistically possible, I think we can always keep that happening. And in today's world, it is expected that you work a 16-hour
Mm.
quite naturally, right? So
Yes.
it's happening that way. But of course, you have to energize yourself. Sometimes you have to tell people how to keep their focus with
Yes.
all these reels and Instagrams that have come. I myself is really feeling the focus span of time is really shortened, right? We are not able to really focus much. These are certain things that you need to find some relaxation, some hobbies. During our younger age, we used to have a lot of hobbies. At least this generation, they should get out of the gadgets and then do something that can bring back the concentration focus, right? Then they don't have to really burn 16 hours, right? And then they will have the right planning, right mindset to do the planning, and then have the courage to go back and tell people that this is the best that they can do, right? So there's a lot of combinational things that you will have to experiment with
Mm.
different teams at different phases with what sales has committed, which is what delivery has to do, right? So when do you really press the pedal speed, and when do you really take back and really look at the quality and consistency, have the milestones checked, so you help people go that wave
Yeah.
that way so that they're not burnt out. But of course they do extended hours of working without
Yeah.
burning completely. They should know how to rejuvenate and come back and do things. Not everybody will code every day 8 hours some logic.
Yes.
Practically not, humanly not possible. Maybe today agents have come, they can do it, but still someone need to come back human in the loop
Yes.
and say that what agents are doing, what AI is doing is right or wrong, right? So that's where the challenge is going to be for the
Yes.
humans to compete with the AI world. But it's not a rocket science. People have done it time and again. With consistency and focus, people can avoid burnouts.
Yes. And when we talk about, large programs, there are multiple stakeholders involved, and all of them come with a different set of agenda. Especially in consulting, it's a big problem. So how do you handle multiple stakeholders who have diverse agendas in a large program?
Okay. Large program always comes with multiple stakeholders, right? You have to deal with at every level, right? So you will even have stakeholders internally and
Mm.
externally.
Mm.
right? So from a skill, it has become an art to deal with stakeholders these days, right? So that's pretty much. So I've had situations where everyone agrees in the meeting, but alignment doesn't really exist, right? So one approach that worked for me is making trade-offs visible. Instead of trying to please everyone, right? You lay your options clearly.
Yeah.
If we do this, there is an impact there, right? It shifts the conversation from options to decisions.
Yes.
So people have to come back and tell you which one they are making, how, which direction they want to go, and things like that, right? And also, you build one-on-one relationships if you have multiple stakeholders. So people are really open in smaller conversations. They will
Yeah.
tell you what really matters to them. So
Yes.
there, you make a deal. You understand better what is each one's goal or what is that they want to achieve as part of this
Mm.
program, because everyone has a stake at
Yes.
different roles and different level. So we
Mm.
do make it. So it's not one size fits all. So you
Mm.
have to early in the race, you have to understand the stakeholder, their
Yes.
dynamics, their likes and dislikes. You try to get that one on one. It's not that easy at
Yes.
different levels. So you have to really strive hard to get there. But once you do it, I think at every level you will be able to bring in those options which you can trade off, and
Mm.
then you can bring in the success for the large programs, right? So it's anyway, the interest is with the program, right? Success of
Yes.
the program. So everyone is towards that, and who brings in the solution doesn't matter. You should always keys. You should always give the credit back to the
Yes.
stakeholder who has actually agreed with your opinion or choice or whatever, right? So you give back the credit because he took the choice, he made the decision. So that makes you more successful and a collaborative partner with the clients.
Yes. And Raja, I think you will be the right person to ask this question because you have kind of risen from being an analyst to, kind of these kind of leadership roles. Is that what separates someone who grows into a leadership than someone who doesn't?
Okay. Okay. I've seen very smart people stay in the same role for years. Others have gone quickly. I've seen
Mm.
all that. So one different that usually is the ownership. Some people focus only on their tasks. People who are successful always try to look at the big picture.
Yes.
What is the outcome? What
Mm.
could go wrong? How can I help beyond my role? Right.
Yes.
And also the communication matters a lot. Being able to explain things simply, clearly makes a big difference as you grow. So ownership is the key.
Mm.
Beyond your role, you have to look at big picture. See, whenever we try to have a conversation with a high stakeholder, maybe
Yes.
3 layers, 4 layers up the ladder
Mm.
than what we do on a day-to-day basis in delivery, right? When you put people and ask them, can you ask some questions to these people, right? It's very difficult for them to like they feel that they're put on spot, like what to ask. The simple thing is, right? They are having a end customer conversation all the time,
Yes.
which you don't, right? So many down in the layer don't do it. So they can ask more about it. What is the client thinking? What direction the business is going? Where is the industry heading? There's a lot of things that you will not know about your client. So you can really ask those things and learn from them, right? So end of it, you will see they will also touch upon ownership as a key thing because that's what would have even brought. So you can observe anybody who's owning certain things, right? They naturally grow up in the ladder because that's
Yes.
what is really visible to the leadership.
Yes. That is so true. And many times, you as a leader have to make a lot of decisions without having complete information. So how do you make those decisions?
See, that is the most time in consulting, right? You can't wait for the perfect information,
Mm.
right? And then start anything. So what you
Yes.
do is you get enough clarity to move forward, right? You make a call, right? In one case, we had to make a call on a solution approach with limited data, right? Waiting would have delayed the program.
Yeah.
So what we made a decision is to, move on with the information that we had, but we set some milestones, some checkpoints where we
Yes.
wanted to go back and check whether we are in the right direction. So
Yes.
you create those kind of workflows and then you move forward because it's about balancing the speed and risk, not eliminating uncertainty completely. You can't do
Yes.
that, right? So in any program, you have to live with uncertainty. And with COVID had taught us, right? So what is uncertainty is all about, right? How well we should be prepared with the current geopolitical situation, with the energy sector getting hit, right? We all know what to do, right? There is no panic, but at the
Yes.
same time, we all know what to do if there is a lockdown or what to do if there is a change in the working model. We all know we have done it the hard way, I would say. Now we all are prepared as to how to move forward. So you can't always live with complete information or look for it. You have to be a little bit prepared. And
Yes. And that is where the gut feeling comes in.
exactly. And then source of information, right? You have friends, you have folks telling you a lot of stuff. The other day I was
Mm.
just having a casual conversation with one of my colleagues. He was just saying there is a panic fuel shopping happening in
Uh,
Hyderabad. I said,
uh,
I know. I couldn't get fuel filled for a couple of days. I was
mm,
longing to get my
mm.
tank filled, but I couldn't. But he said, I have a person in the pump. He can give me a call whenever there is less crowd. So if you want, I'll let you know. So sometimes having such ground level source is very, very important, as I was
Yes,
telling you, right? So you need the
yes,
last man in the team to call you,
yes,
give that freedom,
exactly.
create that space so that you get the information upfront, and you are there to fail fast or achieve things faster, right? So that's pretty key.
That is so well said, sir. That is so well said. And I've seen most of the leaders like you have got their ears to the last person. Even if he is lowest in the rung, they know what is he talking about, what is she talking about, and what is she thinking.
Because you're running distributed team.
Yeah.
How do you get the pulse? What change to bring in? Or sometimes you have to say things that you generally don't say to see how team reacts. What's
Yeah.
their pulse? How is the take?
Mm.
Do they really look? Are you scaring the team?
Yes.
So if you really scare them, what is the reaction?
Mm.
Sometimes you do all this pulse check so
Mm.
that when reality hits, you know how your team is going to behave. Are they going to wait for some instructions? Are they going to make their own things and move on? Right? Then you can look for a quick 1 week vacation and then you can enjoy because you know your team is going to balance. Otherwise, you never take vacations. You have to be all the time around because you create a dependency. So it's
Yes.
always important that you create that kind of ecosystem. Have your sources right. It have
Yes.
sources and have the right sources, and then keep the channel open, right? The rest will automatically
Yes.
happen. That's my experience.
Raja, with all these technology talks all around, where do you think organizations get it wrong?
See, it seems programs where technology is actually, quite advanced, but adoption is low,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
That's pretty much you observe, especially in BFSI, right? There's plenty of technology available, right? Because of the reasons that I was saying, right? The regulatory, the risk appetite, right? The adoption is always low. That's usually
Yes.
because the business side wasn't fully aligned, right? You will always see success in transformation projects when business and technology move together.
Yes.
They're not moving separately, right? Because today with a lot of AI and automation, everything is robustly available, right?
Yes.
Technology is always an enabler. If people don't understand it, trust it, or see the value in it, it doesn't matter how good it is. So
Yes.
end of the day, the business should feel the value of the technology that it is delivering, right? End of the day, it has to solve a real-time business problem. So you will always see, as I was mentioning earlier, right? It was a very eye-opening for me when you sit with the client, when they make the decision, how the business really impact the decision, how it is impacting the business. They really look back.
Yes.
I've recently heard a CIO telling it very openly that I'm making a decision today
Mm.
that I may not live in the organization to see that it is reaping results. I am making a decision today that
Yes.
when it reaps results, I will not be in the organization. I would have been retired
Mm.
right out. But I am making a decision today for 20 years, 30 years down the line. So that is the kind of vision the leaders are having today. So
Mm.
technology is just an enabler. I've seen multiple technologies come and go, right? People go back and forth with technology. Cloud is one example, right?
Yes.
Microservices and monolithic was an example, right? People move back and forth. So technology is very much available. Adoption is the problem. And for
Yes.
you to adopt any technology today, tomorrow, you give it a name to the technology. But if your business is not aligned, they don't see a value in the technology, then there is no value. So you have to create that business impact,
Yes.
right? So you're seeing, right? The other day I was listening to one of your podcasts. A lot of people said that the startups are creating so many things
Yes.
the user, right? You can create multiple things, virtual
Yes.
temples, virtual tours, so much things,
Yeah.
right? But where's the
Mm.
customer? Is the founder making money? The end goal is for the startup to make money, right? You want
Yes.
to do that. You need customers, you want users, right? So
Yes.
as I see, technology is an enabler today. You don't need developers, testers, the agents can build. But what is the business problem you're going to solve? Who's your user? Who's
Yes.
going to pay for it?
Yes.
That is something that is still open.
Yes. Got it, Raja. This is nice. And at the last, and I think you are again the best person to ask this, is that somebody who is early in their consulting career, what do you tell them?
Okay. They have to focus, the focus of that person in understanding the why part,
Yes.
not just the what part, right?
Yes.
So early on, it's easy to get caught up with tasks, right? In consulting, there's so much that you can do, but you have to take time to understand why something is being done, right? That's when you will learn much faster. Also, don't hesitate to take ownership, even in small ways, right? That's what is going to get noticed, right? And finally, you have to be very patient. Growth in consulting is a journey, and the experience you gain along the way matters more than the titles. So, the why are we doing it? Right. I had an example. I will tell you. One of my client wrote in a ticket when I was a business analyst,
Yes.
saying that the person who logged the ticket is about to retire end of the month, and with an open ticket in the system where a button did not work, and she would not get her retirement benefit if she leave any work pending.
Yes. Yes.
So the client wrote directly on the ticket saying, it's going to save her retirement benefits, Raja. Please work on it. Because the person at the client end and me know that overnight or the next day, evening in India time, I'm going to run a monthly batch. So there is a cutoff, even though the month is a week or 10 days later, I'm going to run a cutoff, the batch. So the bug will have to be fixed overnight. It was a data fix, end of the day, right? So we figured it out, we fixed it. I went little, I would say I was a little courageous to go and try the fix in the production, right? Which I generally is not supposed to, but I applied and clicked the button. I know there's going to be a prompt, cancel or okay. I canceled it. Until then, I took the proper recordings and then I sent it to the client the next day, India time. And then I said, this is fixed. I've even tried it in the UAT, but not applied. I've done it in the UAT. I have not applied it in the production, but I've tried it. I've been very honest. And she said, she wrote it in the Jira ticket. You had balls to test it in production without my approval. But given the circumstances, I really appreciate what you have done because it has really saved someone's entire career's pension benefits. So I really appreciate you for what you're doing. Go ahead and apply it, commit it to the production. So I've committed, I said, good enough. And then the part is I keep telling my freshers this story and then I tell them, you're sitting here and doing a coding or you're building a feature. But remember, somebody's life is getting impacted, right? I try to complete a transaction and go for my child's birthday party or a wedding or maybe a vacation. I have to catch a flight or a train. This button is not working. It is throwing an error. There is always a human who's getting impacted behind the work that each of us do. So I keep telling my freshers that don't think you are just coding, looking into the system. You are impacting someone's life, some part of the globe. So always think what you do. So the why part is more important for any consulting guy to understand than the what.
This is very insightful. Like, I think a lot of the freshers who will also be watching this podcast can kind of learn from this. Don't look at what you're coding. Look at what is the impact that's going to create at the, at the
Any human, right? There is a human behind the application, that user, right? So that's the key. You have to always have it back of your mind.
Raja, when you look back to your this 2 decade plus of experience, what's that one experience do you remember which kind of changed the way that you lead today?
Okay. As I was mentioning, right? So there was a time early on, right, when I avoided escalating an issue because I thought we could fix it within the team, I could manage. But by the time it became visible, right, it had already impacted the timelines. It already created the damage. So that really taught me an important lesson. Transparency early is always better than control. That comes too late. You can't control. So since then, I've been much more open about risks and challenges because it builds a lot of trust and it avoids bigger problems later. So that's the way I lead today because you have to be fearlessly saying the risks and challenges.
And you have seen consulting, very closely. And so, how do you think consulting is evolving, especially in areas like BFSI transformation?
See, earlier days, consulting was always on recommendations. You can give them good strategies. You can give strong presentations. Even today, it is still matters. It's more relevant. But clients today expect you to stay through the execution, not just sales part. And they want you to be more accountable for the results, right? So today, consulting is definitely becoming more outcome driven, right? It's not just you tell them what's going to happen and move on, with AI and automation becoming, the game changers, right? The nature of problem is also changing. So
Mm.
it is less about just implementing technology and more about, it's more about integrating it meaningfully into the business, right?
Yes.
But one thing I don't see changing,
Mm.
right, is the human side, right? Say understanding clients, building
Mm.
trust, navigating complexity. That will always be at the core, right, of consulting. It's not going to change, but it's not anymore the recommended or predictive kind of things, right? It is changed to outcome.
Yes. And at the last, like if you have to leave the audience with one thought from your journey, what would that?
Okay, so it's easy to get busy, right? Especially in consulting. There's always something to do, right? But what you do matters is the impact you're creating, right?
Mm.
And also don't wait for the perfect moment to step up,
Yes.
right? A lot of growth comes when you take ownership before you feel completely ready, right? Those moments might feel uncomfortable,
Mm.
but is usually the ones that shape you the most. So
Mm.
to sum up, I would say, true impact isn't about effort. It is about the outcome you create.
True impact is not about the effort, it's about the outcome that you create. Thank you so much, Raj, for joining and sharing these insights with our audience. And must say, this is one of the best podcasts that we have done in the last couple of months, I would say. The clarity in which you kind of explained the things, the examples that you took will not only benefit the senior professionals who are trying to climb up the ladder, but will also benefit a lot of freshers who are starting their career, who want to take an inspiration, what a career should look like, what are the qualities that they should imbibe. And we encourage all of them to watch this podcast. And Raja is there on LinkedIn as well. So, if time permits, he will be happy to get in touch with you. Thank you so much, Raja, for taking out time and sharing these insights. Thanks again.
Thank you, Rishi.